Hello once again, and today we continue with some of my favorite conversations. And in this case, we're going to be kind of talking about the answer to the question, how do you raise an academically successful child? And it doesn't matter whether we're talking homeschooling, public school, private school, there's things that you can do to help that child develop success academically speaking. The first part of this video, we're going to need to touch upon the importance of developing the right home environment. Second, of course, we want to talk about mindset. Third, we want to talk about developing the critical thinking skills and independence. And fourth, it is kind of this balance between freedom and structure and how we kind of go about balancing those out. And fifth, let's look at some real life examples from homes of highly successful academic students. A supportive home environment is both emotional support, right? Really helping to encourage, develop that curiosity in your child, be positive in your approach to them, push them when they need to be pushed, but in a loving manner, right? Make sure that you aren't coddling. Those are all the emotional kind of aspects behind the environment. But we also need to talk about physical environment, right? Having a study-free space, free of distractions, really being cautious and considering electronics, right? We aren't just talking television and games, but phone, the internet. It's going to be crucial for you to kind of monitor that and look at that. Maybe part of the environment is you do work from home. Maybe you do work from home in a certain place and you have your child do their work at the same location. So that sort of support that they get to see, the modeling behavior, all that can be a good thing. But clutter-free, distraction-free working space, so the physical aspect and then the emotional support of being positive, looking to interrupt negative patterns, being encouraging, being firm, all those kind of emotional support aspects will be invaluable in the development of your child's success. So that emotional support I talked about, a lot of that is really geared towards trying to develop the right mindset in your child, right? You want to give them skills to properly manage their emotions, develop those positive beliefs, interrupt negative patterns, interrupt negative beliefs, recognize that they are going to get these from all kinds of sources, right? The more involved they are out there in the world, the more they're going to be bombarded with beliefs that might not be supportive of the goals that they should have, goals that you want to have for them. So as a parent, you need to be constantly monitoring that, looking to interrupt that, looking to develop those positive beliefs. I personally believe, obviously, because this is what I do, is that you really need to think deliberately about how you structure the learning opportunities to develop that mindset. There are processes that you can do as you teach any other skill to teach the skill of managing your emotions, managing your attitudes, which is really what your mindset is. And you should be looking at how to do that. The old model, which has been done for thousands of years, is we try to model the behavior ourselves. We just kind of go about doing it. You know, it's worked okay, but if we really look at where kids are at, especially today, maybe it's time to reevaluate that, given the what we're seeing not only from academic development but the emotional stability of our children. So I'm just putting that plug in there for you to really consider a structured program to train that mindset of your child. So part of the mindset that you're developing is the ability for them to take ownership, take responsibility for where they're at, for everything, but also their learning, right? So this idea of independence as a learner, being able to learn on their own, ask better questions as they go, developing that curiosity. Like, I wonder if, or what if, or how does that work? Or why does somebody do that, right? Asking good questions that will spur them to try to find the answers. That is part of your job in the, not only creating the mindset, but creating that academic foundation that's going to carry them through life, right? When you really are focused on developing that curiosity and the good questioning and trying to get them to think of good questions, not just you posing the questions, but what questions do you have? What questions can you come up with? There's some great resources out there for that, which is the Right Question Institute, which I highly recommend. But there's ways to go about structuring activities that really help train the idea of asking better questions. I grew up in a family. My dad was an architect and an engineer, and after he retired, he was an artist. And I grew up hearing a lot about discipline, right, and freedom. And as an architect and engineer, and even later as an artist, he talked about, and I actually even have a paragraph that he wrote on his idea of discipline, where it's really kind of talking about, it's a tug between structure and freedom. You really have freedom to create only when you have a structure and some discipline around that. That's when you really get the freedom to create. And Dad was right. So that's part of what you want to try to do when you are developing this in your child, is giving them the freedom to create, the freedom to solve problems, but you really need a framework and structure, some discipline established in order for them to really be able to do that well. So there's this constant tug of not being so caught up in the structure of things that they lose their ability to problem solve and create, but so unstructured that there's no direction, right? That structure is supposed to help guide them direction, so they aren't so free thinking that they're going off in all these tangencies that don't really help them solve the problem or create solutions or whatever it might be that you're trying to work on. So that's that balance that you're working on and trying to develop in your child, is structure and freedom. There's a lot of research out there. There's a great book. I highly recommend it. In fact, it's one of the 4 books that I recommend parents read as they really beginning to get their children involved in education. That's A Coddling of the American Mind. One of the co-authors of that was Jonathan Haidt, who also wrote the book The Anxiety Generation, another recommended book. But a lot of these research findings are really about point out some of those issues that we've already talked about in this video and how important those are to help your child become successful, even at strong academic institutions, but even whatever level college they might go to, finding success at that level. These foundation principles are going to help them maximize that potential. So 2 different examples of families that help their child do this. There's the Park family, and their child had won national awards in science. And because they had been able to excel and develop those skill sets, achieved well academically in science, he got himself into Harvard. In the Miller family, some of their emphasis in the development was around collaboration and cooperation and community service. And their child developed a nonprofit or started a nonprofit when she was in high school, and she got into Princeton, right? So that sort of support families and encouragement families gave to their children in particular avenues, science in one and community service in another, helped them do well enough to get into elite schools and then do well in those schools. They gave them that foundational background that they really needed to have. Please consider, again, subscribing to our channel. I'm encouraging you to kind of look at the stuff we have out there, podcasts, more videos, and doing interviews for the podcast regularly and these videos regularly. But you might also be interested in registering for our free webinar, Empower and Excel, and that kind of goes into some of the things that we talked about that you would need to develop that academic skill set and success.